again and let everyone in. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome to Care Concierge with CarePatrol, where education is at the heart of everything that we do. At CarePatrol, we educate our clients and families about the options that are in the front of them on the road, so to speak, to wellness or other issues that may arise. We educate our referral sources as to where we are in the process of helping you. And we educate our providers so that they are adequately able to provide care for the clients that we admit. And along the way, we admit a lot of other services as CarePatrol. So CarePatrol, if you think of us as sort of like a real estate agent for assisted living, then you can think real estate agents sometimes set up attorney or other help, paperwork help. So, legal help, documentation help, application help. So in that vein today, our educators that are our hosts, and we're dearly blessed to have them join us, are Pam Strickland of Medicaid Application Processing Services, which may be easier to remember as MAPS. So Pam Strickland has done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Medicaid applications through the years, over the last 20 or so years. I hate to date you, Pamela. And Bill, of course, was one of the original elder care lawyers, Bill Nolan, in the state of Alabama, starting back in this practice work back in 1982, I believe it was, which, was just very insightful on his part. And I think also speaks to Bill's heart. His heart is in elder care and with elderly folks, as is Pamela's and as is ours at CarePatrol. So we welcome you to Care Concierge. It's our contact education series. We've been focusing throughout September, October, November on clinical issues delivered by clinicians or professional topics delivered by the professionals who actually do the work. And so today, Bill and Pam are going to discuss with us the topic that we put before them, which we offered and teed up, the topic of CMS the Mess. And what they've come back with is something even better. What they're going to tell us about today is how we can protect our retirement, or how you can protect the retirement of your client, of your loved one, family member, church member, whomever it may be. They're going to enlighten us on the process of protecting our income and assets from the Medicaid process or other things. And so we welcome you today in. It's about 12:03. Many of you, I know the names on screen, have been with us before, and you know that we're accredited by the Alabama Board of Social Work examiners, and also by the Alabama Board of Nursing Practitioners. They both say to us that we can create, credential, and provide these contact hours to you. I don't know why my Siri is speaking with me. I'm technologically challenged, y'all. And to that end, Pamela's email or internet is a little funky, so she may come and go with us. Just be patient, and she'll be back. And I'll try and keep things together as we go. But we're accredited by those boards for one contact hour. You must do an evaluation to do or receive the hour, and that evaluation is at the end of the presentation, and we password protect it. So we'll give the password out about 12:50 or 12:56 or thereabouts, and certainly I'm sure someone will remind me, as you so kindly do, knowing me. And so our password link now, I'll give out to y'all that are on a phone or are not able to see a screen. The password link for you to make note of for today's evaluation, which is password protected, the link is https://www.surveymonkey.com/r/ all uppercase letters, the number 8, H is in Harry, P is in Paul, 6, W, F is in Frank, R. And so one more time, that evaluation link, which is password protected, is https://www.surveymonkey.com. Thank you, Ashley Talbot, for posting it for us as well. surveymonkey.com/r/8, H is in Harry, P is in Paul, 6, W, F is in Frank, R. And we'll give the password out later in today's presentation. You must do the evaluation to get credit for the hour. And with that being said, I want to welcome again and thank again my colleagues and friends and folks who I think can be true assets to each of you in what you do. So Pam Strickland and Bill Nolan, please enlighten us and share with us your knowledge about protecting our retirement income.
Gosh, we're happy to be here. Before we begin, we've been talking about Medicaid now for 3 or 4 different sessions, and my concern is that we may have painted Medicaid in a light that is not flattering. And for that, I apologize. That was not our intention. Medicaid is doing valuable, important work out there. It's a hard job to deal with. And I certainly don't want Medicaid, if there's anybody online here today from Medicaid, to think we're picking on Medicaid. We're not. Our goal is to help families understand what the rules are so they can use those rules to their benefit. If you think about, if you we're dealing with the IRS, for example, well, they're not a bad, I mean, they've got a job to do. There's certain techniques that you might not be aware of in filing your taxes and taking deductions or asking for tax credits or whatever it is. And if you call the IRS, well, they might not, they might not tell you. So you go see an accountant or you go see a tax planner and they show you how to do it all. That way you're not breaking the rules. You're just following the rules that, well, you didn't even create them. Medicaid or the IRS created them. So our goal is not to pick on Medicaid and to make them out to be a bad guy, because they're not. Our goal is to help you understand what those rules are so that you can use those rules to your benefit. There, I said it. Medicaid is not the bad guy. And if that was the impression we were giving, I apologize.
Thank you, Bill, for saying that and clarifying that. And I certainly agree wholeheartedly with what you say. I don't want to be party to bashing a system that is so important for so many people in our state and across the nation. But to your very finely made point, there are ways to do the process which would benefit you in receiving Medicaid or in receiving other services. Mm-hmm.
One of the examples I think of is, Medicaid has a 5-year look back rule. And most people read that, say you can't give anything away for less than fair market value within the previous 5-year period immediately prior to a Medicaid application. Well, if Medicaid didn't want you to make gifts at all, that wouldn't be a 5-year. They would say you can't make gifts at all. What Medicaid is saying there is you're welcome to make gifts to anybody you want to, in any amount you want to, as long as you do it at least 60 months before you apply for Medicaid. So that's the same rule. You're just spinning it a little bit different way, that is more of a positive than a negative interpretation. Anyway, our last session, if you recall, many of you who were here before, we devoted that time, the whole time, to talking about how to protect the family's home. People have an emotional attachment with their home. They don't like the idea of losing their home, even if they don't know what they're talking about. They'll say, I don't want the nursing home to get my home. Well, nursing home doesn't want your home. They just want to get paid. Medicaid might expect you to sell your home, use the proceeds prior to applying, or they might want to put a lien on your home if that's the case. But regardless, people don't want to lose their home because it's their single largest asset. For many families, though, their second largest asset, and I guess with some families, it might be the single largest asset, would be their retirement account. Their IRA, their 401k, their 403b. Those accounts people have been saving for decades. And the idea of having to spend those down completely before being eligible for Medicaid, well, it doesn't sit well with some families. They don't like the idea of that. So what we're gonna, and you remember that Medicaid has the rule that says your assets, your resources, we call them assets, Medicaid calls them resources. They can't exceed $2,000 and still be eligible for Medicaid. So for many families, their IRAs have to be dealt with one way or the other before they can even become eligible for Medicaid. So today we're going to talk about IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, and I apologize in advance because this can get into a numbers intensive kind of conversation. And I'm not a particularly numbers person. I've learned how to deal with it over the years. I'm not an accountant. So don't be frustrated or intimidated by the numbers. The concepts are what we want to talk about. I'm joined today by Pam. She's, as you know, the Medicaid guru here in Alabama. She's been, I don't know if you're still running 100% success rate with Medicaid apps, but if she's not, she's right there close to that. She's done more than anybody else I know in the state, and she's very good at what she does. She deals with Medicaid all across Alabama, not just in the Birmingham area either. So good to see you again, Pam.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to talking about this issue.
Well, it's an important issue. I guess the best way to do this is just to take an example. So let's use first the simplest example. Let's use a single person, unmarried person, 80 years old, and they have recently moved to a skilled care facility and have learned that it's going to cost them $8,000 a month to be there. So they talk to the social worker at the facility, and she says, well, we can help you with a Medicaid application, but the problem is going to be your IRA is going to be the barrier. And in truth, this applicant, this person has an IRA, let's say it's $250,000, and that's their only asset. No home, no stocks, bonds, mutual funds, just that one IRA is the asset. 250,000, which is about 248,000 more than what Medicaid would allow on an application. So it's a burden, it's a hurdle. So let's look at his numbers a little bit. Let's say this applicant's monthly income is $1,500 from Social Security. He also, because he's 80, has had to start taking what they call RMDs, required minimum distributions, from his IRA. And according to the tables, the required distribution for someone his age with a $250,000 IRA is about $22,000 annually. So you divide that by 12, and that's $1,833 a month. So his income would be the $1,500 a month Social Security and the $1,800 a month RMD distribution. If he's having to pay $8,000 a month to the nursing home, well, he's going to be about $4,700 a month short on being able to pay from his income, because if you take the $8,000 and subtract $1,500, that's $6,500, and then you subtract the $1,800 from that, and that's $4,700. So $4,700 is his burn rate, how much he's going to be blowing through his IRA every month just to make ends meet. If you do the math, $4,700 a month, and you divide the $250,000 IRA balance. See, I told you it was going to get numbers intense. If you divide this $250,000 IRA balance by the $4,700 a month shortfall, you're going to come up with 54 months as how much time it will take for him to spend down his IRA to the point where he's now eligible for Medicaid. 54 months, 4.5 years, give or take. So, that's a long time. And at the end of the process, he's not going to have anything. He's going to be down to nothing. So is there a way to qualify for Medicaid sooner than 54 months? And is there a reason to want to do so? Maybe there is. Is there any benefit, in other words, to qualifying for Medicaid sooner rather than as a last resort? Because most families, they wait until it's way past time to qualify for Medicaid. And as a result, the community spouse, if they're married, ends up suffering as a result. It doesn't have to happen that way, but people don't know any better. So remember, you and I, and Pam, I'm sorry, I'm setting the stage here for you to jump in. So
No, you go right
apologize
ahead.
if I'm monopolizing the conversation. Remember, you and I pay retail for our nursing home beds. It's about $8,000 a month. If you're lucky, you could go to St. Martin's or Fairhaven or, you know, some of these places that are more than that. But, you know, 8,000 is not far off the Birmingham area. So you and I are paying $8,000 a month. Medicaid, though, they've got a negotiated rate that they've already negotiated with the nursing homes. Now, we don't know exactly what that amount's going to be, but Alabama publishes what they call the average monthly cost of care every year. And that's supposed to be what, on average, it would cost you to be in a nursing home in Alabama. And that's about $6,500 a month, $6,400 a month. So that's a good ballpark of what Medicaid's paying each month for a nursing home bed. So you can see right away, if you can qualify for Medicaid 54 months sooner, you're paying $1,500 per month less for that nursing home bed. So that's going to make your money last a long time. So the savings alone is a good reason to go ahead and qualify for Medicaid sooner rather than later. So back to the IRA. Remember, ask the asset limit Medicaid has, which is $2,000 for a single person. Is there a way to convert that IRA as an asset into an income stream so that it no longer is a barrier to a Medicaid application? In other words, the $250,000, as long as it's in the asset column, is a barrier. If you can convert that asset to an income stream, it goes away as a barrier. Now it's going to add to his income. We're going to deal with that in a second, but that's what we're going to talk about, how you can protect a person who has an asset like an IRA so that they can qualify for Medicaid sooner. They don't have to. We've talked to them about pros and cons, but in general, there are many good reasons to qualify sooner. So Pam,
Yes.
what can you tell us, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but what can you tell us about using an annuity to qualify for Medicaid when you have a big asset like an IRA or 401k?
Certainly. Medicaid allows the individual to have a special type of annuity, and it's a Medicaid compliant annuity. And you can convert an IRA balance into a pure income stream. And when the asset becomes nothing more than an income stream, it's no longer a barrier to Medicaid approval. So it's pretty simple. The IRA owner asks the annuity company to give them a quote as to what he can expect from the annuity in terms of monthly income. And if acceptable, the company would do their thing and swap that IRA for the stream of income. And the income must be at least the amount of the RMDs. But this is really a problem. Now, we have to remember that to be acceptable to Medicaid, the annuity must be actuarially sound, meaning it cannot exceed the individual's life expectancy in terms of payout for the monthly income. So
I'm sorry, what is RMD? I'm sorry.
That is the required monthly distribution that the
Okay.
individual must take at his age of 80.
Right.
Once you turn 72 and a half, you have to start taking money out of your IRA or 401k, even if you don't need it, because the IRS wants that tax revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's RMD.
Yep. So if our person is 80 and his life expectancy is maybe 8 or 9 years, if you divide $250,000 IRA by 8, each year his annuity will pay him it's at least $31,250. So that will add another $2,600 per month to his income.
Let me jump in here just a second, because the thought occurred to me, you know, you and I talk about annuities all the time, but not everybody on our webinar today is familiar with annuities. And so I just wanted to kind of take a step back and explain how annuity works and what it is. An annuity is an agreement that an individual makes with, usually it's an insurance company like, you know, Fidelity or Prudential or Mutual of New York or one of these big outfits. And what you're doing is you're exchanging a lump sum of money for a guaranteed monthly payment for the rest of your life. So if you live to be 175 years old, technically the annuity company is supposed to pay you that negotiated amount every month as long as you live. So an annuity, you're exchanging principal for a stream of income. And a lot of older people really like that because it's a fixed income. They can count on it every month. That's an annuity in its simplest form. It's a contract that a person makes with an insurance company or a bank to guarantee themselves a stream of income for the rest of their life. That's an annuity. Now, they can get fancier and get the variable and fixed and all that, but they're all essentially the same thing. You're in effect making a loan to an insurance company. You're saying, here's my $250,000. You pay me back, what do we figure, $32,000 a year for the rest of my life, however long that is. And then the insurance company would use it to build buildings and finance shopping centers and whatever they're doing with the money. That's how they generate money rather than going to the bank and borrowing it. So there, that's my sermonette on annuities. Let's see. And remember,
Pam, you had said something about that he's 80. We're going to assume he's going to live to be 8 years. Is that a general calculation? Do you? Because Bill then said, well, they're going to pay him the same amount whether he lives 8 years or however 20-something years.
Well, the annuity companies, they look at your gender, they look at your life expectancy, however old you are and what your life expectancy is. And there's a table called, well, let's see, I know the HCFA 64 table will show your life expectancy. It also shows life interest and remainder interest, but there's established tables that the insurance industry and Medicaid uses to calculate a person's life expectancy. And that's what the annuity companies would use as well.
Okay. It's a Social Security actuarial table.
Mm-hmm. Got you.
In this case, this applicant, the single applicant, his income was $1,500 a month plus the $1,800 a month. Now his income, if he annuitizes his IRA, well, he still gets his $1,500 a month Social Security, but instead of $1,800 a month as a required minimum distribution, now he's getting more than that. I think it was $2,600 a month from the annuity. And then he would pay tax every year on whatever he gets on that annuity, just like he would on his RMDs. So his income now has gone up a good bit. It's $1,500 a month plus the $2,600 a month, and that's $4,100 a month. Is that right? He's still short though. He's still short. He can't afford to privately pay. And now if he exchanges his principal, his IRA, for an annuity stream, he doesn't have a surplus that he can pull out of every month. But now he can apply for Medicaid because he's eligible. Remember, he no longer has that principal. Now his income has gone up to $4,100 a month, I guess. Mm-hmm. But he's still short of the $8,000, so he has to qualify for Medicaid. Now, how is he going to qualify for Medicaid if his income is higher than what Medicaid says you can have as income and still be eligible? Medicaid says that you can have $2,523 a month in income and be eligible for Medicaid. We're one of the states called an income cap state. If your income exceeded that 2523 by a penny, you would no longer be eligible for Medicaid. But Medicaid has allowed the use of a technique called a qualified income trust, which we talked about in the last session. A qualified income trust is a glorified bank account, and your income would go into this qualified income trust. And then whatever that income is every month would go to the nursing home, even if it was more than $2,523 a month. But by using that intermediate step, you can now become eligible for Medicaid. So his income is now $4,100 a month going into his QIT. That would become his copay to the nursing home for Medicaid purposes. So Medicaid would cover whatever the shortfall is between his copay of, now it's $4,100 a month, and whatever his monthly cost was at the nursing home. Is that your understanding as well, Pam? Is that how it works?
It is, and of course that that doesn't take into account, he gets to keep his $30 per month from Social Security as a personal needs allowance, whatever that helps with him. And if he is paying any supplemental insurance like Blue Cross, Blue Shield C Plus, or anything like that, he would pay that. And then what remains out of the 4,100 would then go to the nursing home, and Medicaid would pick up that difference.
Mhm. So, and we mentioned, I guess the last session or the time before that, that when you're shopping for nursing homes, it's not necessarily smart to shop for the cheapest nursing home. If Medicaid's going to be picking up the shortfall, you might as well find the one that's most convenient for you, or the nicest one you can find. In other words, shopping by price is not necessarily the best way to go if you're looking to finance it through Medicaid. So I guess the question we have to ask at this point is, have we gained anything from all this? You know, you've had to deal with an annuity, you have to set that up, and now you no longer have your $250,000 IRA. You have a guarantee of income of at least $31,000 a year, $2,600 a month. But have you gained anything else? Well, you're eligible for Medicaid now, so you're only paying $6,500 a month for your bed rather than $8,000 a month. And that's a huge savings. I mean, I don't know what that is, $1,500 a month times, we said, if he qualifies 4.5 years sooner, times, that would be 54. You would save $81,000 over that 54-month period. So that's a lot of money. I think that's worth it. That's one of the things you've gained is the you've made his money last longer, in effect. So if he dies before his life expectancy, the money remaining in the annuity, if there is any, would be subject to a right of set-off by Medicaid. In other words, Medicaid has sort of a lien on that remaining annuity amount. So if he died and there was still $100,000 in the annuity, well, Medicaid's going to have first dibs on whatever they're owed against that annuity. So let's say that Medicaid has put in $80,000 towards his care over his time on Medicaid. Well, they're going to get the first $80,000. The remaining $20,000 is then available to go to his beneficiaries, whoever that might be, kids, spouse, grandkids, whatever. If there is no money left in the annuity at his death, well, there's nothing for Medicaid to have a right of set-off against. So, but the point is, if you're saving $81,000 over his annuity period, there's a much greater chance there's going to be money left in that annuity at his death than there would be if you had been privately paying $8,000 a month, if that makes sense. So that's how it works with a single person, with one individual. Now, the more realistic way to look at this, I guess, is let's look at a married couple and see how that works. It comes as a shock to a lot of people that IRAs, 401ks, 403bs are individually owned assets. That is, if you are the one who set the IRA up and you're the one contributing the money, even if you're married, that money doesn't belong to your spouse. It belongs to you. And that comes as a shock to people because only the person who owns it can make decisions about how it's invested, how it's spent, how it's withdrawn, and all that. So that's one reason why spouses should have powers of attorney between the two of them, because you would not want to tie your spouse's hands if you had to go into a nursing home and she could no longer access your IRA. But that's my other sermonette. So given that the IRA, 401k, 403bs are individually owned assets, there are really two different scenarios that we'd talk about with a married couple. One is the community spouse is the one who owns the IRA. Community spouse is the one who stays at home in the community. Or the other option is the institutional spouse is the one who owns the IRA, the one who's in the institution. And in reality, you might have a little of both, but let's keep it simple here. So remember, Medicaid could care less about whose name is on an asset. As long as you're married, if all the assets are in the community spouse's name, doesn't matter. Medicaid's going to say, you've got to have assets no more than this amount of money to qualify. So Medicaid is looking at this, the couple as the owner of assets, even if in reality the IRA only belongs to one person. And remember this, another sermonette, prenups have absolutely no bearing on a Medicaid application. So if your people have set up a prenup because they got married later in life, and the prenup says, you know, if one of us goes into a nursing home or we get a divorce, each couple takes their respective assets and goes their respective ways. Nobody has any obligation to support the other. Well, that's not how it works with Medicaid. Medicaid's going to ignore that prenup. So that comes as a real shock to people, and just wanted to mention that. So let's say first that your community spouse is the only person who has an IRA, and she has 250,000, good round number. And that's the only asset that is preventing the institutional spouse from being eligible. Medicaid would probably say, well, you need to spend that $250,000 down on private nursing home care until it's down to 2,000, and then come back and see us. And that's the rule. I mean, that's the black and white rule they have to work with. But it's really not fair when you think about it for the community spouse to have to spend down her only asset that she has for retirement on the institutional spouse, because it's going to leave her destitute in the future and she won't be able to afford her own care. So it's just not fair. But the best Medicaid would offer somebody like that is, do you remember we talked about something called the CSRA, the Community Spouse Resource Allowance, the last time? It's between numbers and acronyms, you know, it's hard to keep up with all this stuff. But the Community Spouse Resource Allowance is a figure, an amount of money that Medicaid will allow the community spouse to keep and not have to use for the institutional spouse. And that number is 137,400 currently until the end of the year.
Yep.
So if let's say that our community spouse has an IRA of 250,000, Medicaid would say their best offer would be, okay, well, let's take the community spouse resource allowance and we'll divide that $250,000 so you can keep up to 50% of that asset. So that means she would get to keep $125,000 outside of a Medicaid application. The other $125,000 though would have to be spent down to $2,000 to allow the institutional spouse to qualify for Medicaid. Well, that leaves her $125,000 to work with. Is there a better way to do it though? Is there something that we could do that would help her out? Well, I think so. You know, you could, Medicaid uses this thing called the name on the check rule, which says, you know, they look at assets as the couple's assets, regardless of whose name is on the asset, but they look at your income by whose name is on the check each month. So the community spouse could have $1 million a month in income, and it wouldn't affect the institutional spouse's application. So what can we do here? Well, let's say that the community spouse, she has her $250,000 IRA, and as long as it's an IRA, an asset, he can't qualify. But if she converts her IRA to a Medicaid compliant annuity, it becomes an income stream. It's no longer an asset. It no longer is a barrier to his Medicaid application. Now, it would increase her monthly income, let's face it, because her monthly income stream is going to be greater than her required minimum distributions would have been. But the couple would also have a pretty significant unreimbursed medical expense deduction because of his nursing home cost. So if he's spending $2,523 a month for nursing home care, once he's approved for Medicaid, multiply that times 12, 25, 23 times 12. I told you it was going to become numbers intensive. That's $30,000 every year that they generate as an income tax deduction because of his medical expenses. So that would offset whatever her increased IRA distributions would be easily. So just to wrap it all up, the community spouse could annuitize her IRA. She's giving up the principal, but she's guaranteeing herself an income stream. It allows him to qualify for Medicaid months, maybe years sooner than otherwise. And she gets to keep basically all of the money from the IRA rather than just half of the money. So I think that's a better outcome for everybody. He qualifies sooner. They get a discounted rate on the bed. She gets to keep all of her money. She increases her income. Win-win for everybody. So Pam, do you have any observations or thoughts on that particular strategy?
It's an excellent strategy. We've used that before and it's worked well. And of course, Medicaid would require that they be the beneficiary of after the annuitant passes away. Medicaid would want the first position beneficiary for that so that they can be paid back what they've paid. But anyway, but besides that we've used that before and it's worked well. And it's an excellent way to save the in retirement income for the community spouse and also give her the income for the remainder of her life.
Well, that's my attitude as well. Like if we can find a way to make their money last longer, to increase her income and get him qualified sooner, you know, what's the downside? Let's reverse that. Let's assume that it is the institutional spouse who has the IRA, not the community spouse. Well, Medicaid, remember, says if it's over $2,000, you're not eligible. So could the institutionalized spouse annuitize his IRA and qualify sooner? And is there a reason to want to do that? And what are the benefits to doing that? So let's say that the institutionalized spouse has the $250,000 IRA. Well, the easiest thing to do is what we did for the single person. That is, annuitize it. It increases his income, which increases his copay to the nursing home, but allows him to qualify 54 months sooner than otherwise. Nothing wrong with that. Another strategy might be, and of course, we'd have to work all these out and figure out the best one for each client. But let's say that another strategy might be to use that community spouse resource allowance again. Remember the one that says the community spouse can keep 50% up to a certain amount of money as her resource allowance, and Medicaid could care less about it. Well, in this case, 250,000 would be divided into equal shares, 125 and 125. And Medicaid does this 50% up to an amount because it allows, you don't get to keep $137,400 if the couple doesn't have $274,800 in assets. In this case, it's $250,000 in assets. So she gets to keep 50% of that, $125,000. That's her money. The other $125,000 though has to be spent down. But if the institutional spouse annuitizes that, it becomes an income stream and no longer is a barrier. So the community spouse gets to keep her $125,000 outright. The institutional spouse annuitizes his and converts it to an income stream, and now he's eligible for Medicaid.
We have a question, which is someone, Gail Thrasher, has asked if the rules must have changed in Alabama. Bless you. It used to be, she says, that Alabama was a state that would not allow an annuity for this.
It's true. We had to fight for it for years. Yeah, Medicaid's attitude was an annuity has to be non-assignable, non-liquidatable, and you can't sell it to somebody. And there are these companies called J.D. Wentworth is one you've probably seen their ads on television. They would buy settlements from people. Like if you had a judgment against some company or an annuitized settlement, they would buy it from you for pennies on the dollar, but they would still buy it from you. And some people would rather have a chunk of change than an income stream. So it has been recently, and I don't know when, Pam, that Medicaid has grudgingly allowed the use of annuities as long as they meet their requirements, being actuarially sound, non-cancelable, non-assignable. You can't sell them for any amount of money. And Medicaid has to have a first position on as a beneficiary. So that's the latest that I haven't heard them backtrack on that at all. So in the situation, institutional spouse splits his IRA into two $125,000 chunks. The community spouse keeps hers free and clear. The institutional spouse annuitizes his $125,000. It increases his income. He might have to use a qualified income trust to digest some of that, but still he gets his Medicaid, he gets the discounted rate and so on. Another option, oh, and by the way, if you remember the minimum monthly needs allowance, another abbreviation, the minimum monthly needs allowance is an amount of money that Medicaid says the community spouse is entitled to have no less than this amount of money just to subsist on every month. And if the institutionalized spouse's income is greater than the community spouse's, and if the community spouse's income is below this minimum monthly needs allowance, Medicaid will allow enough of the institutionalized spouse's income to be shifted back to the community spouse so that she has at least as much as the minimum monthly needs allowance allows every year. So if he were to annuitize his IRA, his half of the IRA, and if the community spouse's income was less than the minimum monthly needs allowance, then some of his annuitized income stream every month would go back to her towards her living expenses, which is a win for her. Another option would be to use a portion of the institutionalized spouse's one half. You know, he has 125,000 to deal with. She has 125,000 to deal with. To use a portion of his 125,000 to set up a special needs trust with the Alabama Family Trust, and then annuitize the rest. Now, why would you do that? Well, because remember, with the Alabama Family Trust, you can use the proceeds in the family trust to supplement what Medicaid is covering. So Medicaid will pay for a semi-private room, but they won't pay for a private room if there are semi-private rooms available. Well, you can use some of your family trust money to upgrade to a private room every month. Some people like that. You can use it to pay for professional caregivers. You can use it to pay for trips to the salon and manicure place and whatever else you might be. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to have a family trust set up, because it gives you some flexibility and freedom on how to spend the money. But those are all details that we'd work through with people to figure out, well, what's best for you? What do you need? What do you want? And so on. So we've covered how to deal with an annuity if you're a single person, how to deal with an annuity if the community spouse is the owner of the IRA, and how to deal with how to set up an annuity if the institutionalized spouse is the owner of the IRA. And it doesn't have to be an IRA, it can be a 401k, 403b, and so on. What I'm not sure about, Pam, you might know the answer to this. What about a thrift savings plan if you're a federal employee? Would it work the same way with a thrift savings plan, or have you had that come up?
The only thing I've had come up is an HSA account, and they don't look at that.
Okay.
So that's an account they just, I supplied the information to them and they said, we don't need to know that. And so that was taken off the table with Medicaid. So I would think the thrift would be the same, but I've not dealt with that one.
Yeah, it's, federal employees, like you worked your whole life with Social Security or some would have a thrift savings plan. And my understanding is it's identical to an IRA, but it's just administered by the feds.
I see.
Well, we have covered a lot of math intensive, detailed stuff today, and I appreciate you tuning in. I guess the point I'd like you to leave with is not that you have to remember all these details, but remember, if you have a loved one or client or a patient who has an IRA and someone has told you that's a barrier to eligibility, not necessarily. There are techniques that you can use that might get somebody approved months or years earlier than otherwise. And I guess we have a little bit of time to talk about reverse mortgages, Pam, if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, that's something that's becoming more and more popular. You'll find some of the elderly couples are beginning to get a reverse mortgage to help them get through each month. I mean, there's many different reasons to get a reverse mortgage, but how does Medicaid deal with reverse mortgages? Well, in Medicaid's eyes, it's a loan. It's a loan, and they will not use it as a countable resource. Payments from reverse mortgage can be categorized as loan proceeds. And let's say that your house is, they give you $10,000 and you have that in 1 month. Well, that's going to put you over for that month that those loan proceeds come in, but you'll need to spend those loan proceeds or do something with them to get you under the limit if you're a single person and you're trying to apply for Medicaid. When the proceeds come in, that's when you're going to need to do something with those proceeds. But do they look at the house and then do they look at the loan? It's not yours anymore. You have given that up for this amount of income to come in. And once you pass away, the house has to be sold and that loan paid back, or that house has to, that company will sell that house to get their money. So Medicaid does not attach that. They may put a lien against it, but depending upon the value of the home and what loan proceeds you received, that's how that works. They look at the amount you received, what the fair market value is, and what's sitting on the table. If you were going to, they were going to give you a loan for $200,000 and you've only drawn 10,000 out of that other money is sitting there, well, then that would pay the house off and anything remainder would go to Medicaid. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think something I've learned talking with folks is not everybody a certain age or below is as familiar with how reverse mortgages work as people in their elderly years like me. So just to kind of give you a background, a reverse mortgage is a reverse mortgage. You know, with a mortgage, you're saying, give me a bunch of money so I can buy this house and I'll pay you back over time. That's a mortgage. With a reverse mortgage, you're saying, I've got all this equity in my house and it's not doing me any good, but I'd like to give that equity to you, Mr. Lender, and in return, you're going to give me back either a stream of income or a chunk of income. And I don't have to pay you back a dime until I'm dead. And then my estate would figure out a way to pay you back. That's how a reverse mortgage works. You have to be 63 to get one. And one of the reasons why it doesn't really work that well with Medicaid is you have to remain in the home to be eligible. Because if you move out of the home, the loan comes due. And so if you move to a nursing home, the lender is going to find out. And they're going to say, hey, you need to pay us back all this money we gave you. So with a reverse mortgage, if you're over 63 and you want to stay in your home, as long as you can cut a deal with one of these reverse mortgage lenders and they'll give you maybe 60, maybe 70% of the value of the home as a loan. Now you can't get it all in the first year, but you can get it all in 2 years. You can use that money to pay for caregivers, and a lot of people do. They'd rather be at home and have a caregiver come to them than go to a skilled care facility. You can use that to pay for caregivers. You can use it to pay for upkeep on the home. You can use it for really anything you want to use it for. But the lender has a mortgage, basically a lien against the house, and they're going to be on there years before Medicaid puts their lien on there. So then it becomes, well, who gets it? Does the lender get it or does Medicaid get it? And that's really not your problem because you've given up the house years ago. And that's not a transfer like, Medicaid has the 5-year look back rule because you've exchanged that for value, for real value. That is the loan proceeds. So that's how a reverse mortgage works. They're not for everybody, but for certain people, they're a great tool. Especially if you want to stay in your house for, the rest of your life, or at least as long as you can foresee being able to.
And that also goes along with Medicaid community waivers, the home waiver program. They do look at your finances for that. And so you have to be careful. If you're going to bring caregivers in the home, you can do that and certainly pay for it with this money. But that may put you over the limits you need to be at for the community waiver program.
Yeah, that would be an unfortunate consequence, I guess, of reverse mortgage for sure.
So are y'all, I'm not clear, are y'all for or against, or is it neither? or reverse?
It's a case by case basis with me.
Me too. It's, for families where the kids have moved away, they're not coming back to Birmingham. It's just one less thing the kids have to worry about, when you're gone. Now and it's great for families who want to stay in the home, and really, if it's a married couple, just one of them has to stay in the home. The other one could be in the nursing home. So I guess in that sense, Medicaid could be involved in the conversation sooner rather than later. But they're not for everybody. They can be kind of expensive to set up relative to a regular mortgage. The fees or the points can be higher on them. But, it's a source of equity out there that people just disregard. And it's like money in the bank. And there's no reason to waste it if it's there, for you to use.
What would be the difference then? This has been my question about reverse mortgages. Why not just get a HELOC? I mean, why not just take out what you can, spend it on what you want, and not be limited by how you spend it, or et cetera?
Well, you have to pay back your equity line every month. You have to make a payment every month. And with a reverse mortgage, you don't have to pay a dime until you're gone. Gotcha. So that monthly payment can be the make or break difference right there.
It's all about what you bring in per month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you're on a fixed income, every dime counts. And
it does.
It counts in my house too.
Well, and just remember that, if a person does have equity in their home, and they can do this even if they have a mortgage on their home, as long as they have equity in it, because what they'll do is they'll pay off that existing mortgage with the new reverse mortgage. So you don't have to be free and clear. You just have to have some equity in the home. So if a person wants to stay at home and want to bring caregivers in, and they're not looking at an imminent Medicaid application if they're single, or they're not both looking at it if they're married, a reverse mortgage might be the tool to keep them there, to give them more monthly income. And then if you see a family with an IRA or 401k, and it doesn't have to be an IRA or 401k. It could be just a big savings account. Mm-hmm. So I don't want you to think that it has to be an IRA. It could be any chunk of money, but IRAs typically are harder to deal with than bank accounts are.
Mm-hmm.
Medicaid will tell you straight up, cash that IRA in. They'll tell you, take the hit on the taxes and cash that in. That's going to be their advice.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come to Bill or to me, and we start speaking about the annuity part of that, that's a planning tactic. It's not something that Medicaid would recommend to you. They would recommend cash it in, spend it down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, normally before this annuity was approved and we could do that, it would be an AFT situation.
Mm-hmm.
AFT means?
Alabama Family Trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be a test at the end of this on all the.
I mean, the numbers I got lost a long time ago, but I think to what I get from what we've discussed, whether you're an individual or a married couple, is that really the annuity is the sort of linchpin to this, it seems. And then from that, you may extend into doing trust work like family trust or QIT. And then again, what you're doing, and certainly in those with the annuity, is preserving income or assets for the community spouse. But I'm still a little confused. So who is it? So you say the IRA or the 401k or whatever the vehicle is recognized as being only under the person who opened it, and yet Medicaid views it as a community asset. They don't care. So then to whom would it matter? The bank, the court, that it's an IRA? Because it doesn't matter to Medicaid.
No, if we had the situation come up a couple of years ago where a 69-year-old guy had a massive stroke and he's now in rehab, and the rehab people say the people at the facility said he's going to need skilled care for a while. He might come back, but he might not. And the wife asked how much it was going to be, and it was about $7,500 a month. And he had a pretty significant IRA, but she couldn't touch it. She called the IRA administrator and said, "I'm going to need $7,500 a month for my husband's IRA." And they said, "Well, put him on the phone, and he's got to be the one that gives us that instruction." And she had to tell him, well, he's not really speaking too well right now with this, ventilator in his mouth. So she was stuck. She couldn't do a thing. Even though the money was there, she couldn't direct it because it was his asset.
Got it. So her solution would have been to have had a naming herself and her husband as powers of attorney for one another.
That would have been the ideal situation. So she could then control how that money was withdrawn every month.
Okay.
Other than that, you have to go through a conservatorship, which is an expensive, delayed, time-consuming proposition to gain access to the 401k or IRA.
Well, we've talked, I've been through that, but we were able to get emergency powers that would just, as extended every 15 days until the court date for conservatorship. So that's an option, but it is expensive. I just paid a bond again last week. Every year.
Yeah, every year.
I think it's every year. It feels like it's more often than that, but you don't want to go down there.
Yeah,
it's no fun.
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's always fun to talk to people about these techniques and help them understand. And I hope we didn't confuse you completely with all the numbers and abbreviations we've been throwing around. You're welcome to reach out to either of us, email, call, whatever, and we'll do our best to walk you through it. And we're always happy to answer any questions that your clients and patients might have as well.
Yeah, and Bill, I've included your email and Pam's email and phone in the chat room, but why don't you just each say it? Because some people who view this later, or even who are listening now, may not know how to contact you because they're not seeing the chat room.
Sure. Well, my email or our website is elderlawalabama.com, and Alabama is spelled all the way out. Hindsight's 50-50, as Pat Dye said. I probably would have just used al.com, but I didn't. It's alabama.com, elderlawalabama.com, and my email is Nolan, my last name Nolan at elderlawalabama.com.
And my website is unfortunately long. It's Medicaid Application Processing Services.com. That's my website. And my email is pam.maps, M-A-P-S, .al@gmail.com.
Great. Thank you both. The password, in fact, today, I'm glad you just mentioned that. I led you to it, is MAPS, M-A-P-S, all caps, is today's CEU password. So again, you must do an evaluation in order to receive our contact hour credit. I'll read the evaluation link. Once again, it's https://www.surveymonkey.com/r/ all uppercase letters 8 H as in Harry, P as in Paul, 6 W F as in Frank, R https://www.surveymonkey.com/r/all uppercase 8 H as in Harry, P as in Paul, 6 W F as in Frank, R. The password is MAPS, all caps. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. I hope you'll join us on Friday. We'll be back then at noon and look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again, Bill and Pam. As I've said before, I'm indebted to you. It's my honor that you agree to, yes, Ms. Witherspoon, that's correct, MAPS. It's my honor that you join us each time, and I know that we all benefit greatly from the information, so thank you.
You bet. I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving too, coming up quick, whether you're ready or not.
That's right.
That's right. Thank you all so much.
Enjoy.
Goodbye.
Take care.